You think the Ohio State-Michigan football rivalry is intense? Well, buckle up, because about 200 years ago, these two weren't just fighting for a spot in the Big Ten championship. They were literally raising armies to go to war with each other, and it was all over a tiny sliver of land that nobody seemed to agree on. This whole saga, known as the Toledo War, kicked off way back in 1803. Ohio becomes a state, and when they draw their borders, they draw the northern line just a little bit higher than was originally intended. Why? Well, they wanted to make sure they got control of the mouth of the Maumee River, a super valuable port area. That little chunk of land they grabbed, it included a town that would eventually be called Toledo. At the time, nobody really cared. It was sparsely populated, and Michigan was still just a territory. But fast forward to the 1830s, Michigan is getting ready to apply for statehood. They look at their own maps, dust off the old ordinances, and say, hey, wait a minute. That land, that Toledo Strip, that's ours. Suddenly, this obscure piece of real estate becomes the most important place on earth for both of them. And that's when things got really, really weird. Both sides started acting like they were in a full-blown international conflict. Ohio's governor appointed a mayor for Toledo. Michigan's young, hot-headed governor, a guy named Stevens T. Mason, who was only 24 years old, responded by passing a law making it illegal for anyone in the Toledo Strip to recognize Ohio's authority. The punishment? A massive fine and up to 5 years of hard labor. He wasn't kidding around. Then they both raised militias. We're talking thousands of men, armed and ready to defend their claim. The Ohio militia gathered just south of Toledo, while the Michigan militia positioned themselves just north. They were literally staring each other down across the Maumee River, trading insults and threats. It was a standoff, teetering on the edge of actual bloodshed for weeks. There were a few scuffles, some arrests, and even a non-fatal stabbing. But thankfully, no major battle ever broke out. They called it the Pains and Penalties War because of the harsh punishments Michigan threatened. So with two states about to go to war, who steps in? None other than President Andrew Jackson. Now, Jackson had a big problem. A presidential election was coming up, and Ohio was a political powerhouse with a ton of electoral votes. Michigan, as a mere territory, had zero. The math was pretty simple for him. He needed Ohio to be happy. So Jackson and Congress basically strong-armed Michigan into a deal. They said, look, you can have your statehood, which you desperately want, but you have to give up the Toledo Strip. Michigan, feeling completely betrayed, initially refused. They were furious. It felt like a massive injustice, but the deal came with a sweetener. To make up for losing Toledo, Michigan would get the western three-quarters of the Upper Peninsula. At the time, Michiganders thought this was a terrible trade. They called the UP a sterile region on the shores of Lake Superior, destined by soil and climate to remain forever a wilderness. They thought they were getting a frozen wasteland full of nothing but rocks and trees in exchange for a valuable port city. So the compromise was sealed in 1836. Michigan became the 26th state, Ohio kept Toledo, and the war was over. But here's the hilarious twist. Just a few years later, massive, incredibly rich deposits of copper and iron ore were discovered in the Upper Peninsula. That worthless piece of land turned out to be an economic gold mine that fueled America's Industrial Revolution and made Michigan incredibly wealthy. In the long run, Michigan arguably got the better end of the deal. And as for the people living in the Toledo Strip, well, not everyone was upset about the change. There's a story, probably a legend but too good not to share, about a woman who lived in the disputed territory. When she was told that she was no longer a resident of Michigan, but was now officially an Ohioan, she reportedly sighed with relief and said, "Thank the Lord. I never did like that Michigan weather anyway."